All right. Players are asking me if they're ready.
Yeah.
Yep, you guys can start. Good luck. All right.
Mountain. Riftbolt. I mean, the good news for Burn at least here is keep winning them die rolls.
Yeah, I did see Greg Mulligan. I think he put at least one card on the bottom.
I have no idea what the actual spread would look like, but I'm curious to know what the percentage of games won on the play versus on the draw is for Burn, because it feels like it would be like the difference between Goblin Guide against an opponent who hasn't taken a game action versus a Goblin Guide that opponent has a mana and potentially has cast a spell already is so starkly different to me that I wonder if the spread is above 10%.
Well, Kaplan knows what he's up against here. He saw round one. Does he have any meaningful game plan? Greg pointed out that Kaplan's sideboard does contain the word Hydroblast. So that's one improvement.
Yeah. Just having additional, at least another additional thing to board in is good.
Yep.
Let's see what he would board. I mean, he's also got a Vapor Snag, which is fine. It's not great, but it's fine. Otherwise, the deck is pretty much the same. He's got a Forger.
Yep.
Instead of double PZ, so he does a 1-1 split there.
Dreadhorde. So we know from our post-game interview that this is the creature that Greg wants to kill on sight. This is a high priority.
Yeah, I mean it's the best. It's the best and for the most part only relevant threat in the matchup.
Yeah.
Like the other threats really don't matter all that much. Maybe Forger because it's like doing its best to be an Arcanist.
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
I mean,
it also blocks better, I guess, is what I was thinking.
I mean, the fact that it blocks, yeah. Right now we're seeing at least a game plan that looks like it is favorable for Delver in that Greg Mulligan has not hit a second land drop and has not stuck a recurring source of damage.
Right.
Which means that if, after pondering and pondering again, Dave could potentially work up enough resources to start making one-for-one trades that he can then exploit with the Arcanist, which is like the game plan that we discussed last time. I mean, this Rift Bolt, I assume, has to be pointed at the Arcanist.
Yeah. I guess Kaplan's thinking about countering it, though. That's where we are.
I mean, if you have a Force of Will, if you have nothing else to pair with the Arcanist, then maybe not. But if you have a Force of Will and anything to pair with the Arcanist, I think you snap Force. We're seeing a Force of Will, and it's going to pitch a Brazen Borrower. Yeah, I mean, Force of Will, pitch Brazen Borrower. Brazen Borrower seems like really solid, just blank blue cardboard for this matchup.
Yeah. I guess my approach in general, this is situational, but is to save my Force of Wills in this matchup for the Fire Blasts and the, game-winning spells.
Yeah, I mean, like the trickiness with that is it's easy for Burn to play through a Force because they can just overload it.
Yeah.
But that was a good turn for Greg, as he found a second mana source. He was able to get rid of the Arcanist, and then he played a Swift Spear, which is his first source of recurring damage, but it ate a Bolt. But
see, now, would you have played Swift Spear first or Bolt first?
I think playing Bolt to play around a Daze, if you were considering it, is good if you really are worried about the Arcanist, which I think is fine.
Okay, yeah.
Especially since you're on the mana disadvantage, because you're on the back foot with your mana. If you were going to get the Bolt countered or the Swift Spear countered, I think you're more likely in favor of getting the Swift Spear countered, because even if you go Swift Spear Bolt, if that Bolt gets countered, then that Arcanist is going to be able to block follow-up Swift Spears unless your hand is just a bunch of action and your opponent does nothing. And right now he's on 2 cards.
And what you were talking about in round one about the player that you still don't remember their name, but uh, they said to completely play this matchup around days. So that person likely would not have even played the Swift Spear that turn.
I think there's rationale if you can essentially like use your Swift Spear as a storm spell. The downside though is that in this position, Greg was pretty stuck on mana. He had just found his second mana source on turn 4.
Right.
So it's like if you're hamstringed like that, then sometimes you just have to play around what you can. It's interesting though because I think that I agree with the way that he played his line. Greg played that line around a potential daze this game, but I disagree with the way he did it last game, where he led with the Goblin Guide. Because he had a second Eidolon. I think Eidolon is your best threat, and if you can go play an Eidolon through a daze, it survives untapped. Even if you don't get the Goblin Guide action, on the next turn you can play an Eidolon through a daze and then play a Goblin Guide, and then that daze is pretty much shut off because it's going to cost 4 life. Right, so it's a little bit more patient, but it seems like it's just going to convert the most damage if those Eidolons stick, and you can just blank cards that your opponent has.
Walked Airplane, thanks for the follow. Appreciate you watching.
That's also me giving analysis, on how to play a deck that I've literally never played and will never play. You'll never see me sleep up a Lava Spike.
Hey, we're doing our best. Swift Spear.
Swift Spear in, putting him to 9 if it goes through. Yeah. I mean, multiples of 3. That's where the deck wants its opponent to be.
Yep. And Exquisite Firecraft is in the main. For what it's worth.
Firecraft is your best card against anybody blue, right?
Yep. He's dropped that hammer on me a few times. He calls it the hammer of this deck.
Yeah. That seems to be what it is, right? Like another one of those delicious cards you can't interact with.
All right. So Dreadhorde has done all of 2 damage so far. This is an uphill battle still for Kaplan, I think.
Yeah, I mean that Arcanist 2 damage, but it's exactly the game plan that I think the Blue-Red Delver needs in order to actually convert any games in this matchup, right? So that Arcanist, the first one converted a Ponder, so it went up a card. This one converted another card by recurring a Bolt that got rid of a Swift Spear.
Yep.
And it's been, drawing double Arcanist and getting some action, and now it's going to flash back this Brainstorm if there's no response to kill it. I would think that you would try and fire off a removal spell in response to that Brainstorm if you had it, so
yeah.
That way he can't find protection. I guess you could consider, if you have the removal spell, firing it off when he targets whatever he targets in the graveyard, but then he still gets it, so that doesn't really make sense.
Jason correctly pointing out that the first Dreadhorde did put him down a card because the Force had to protect it. That's true. But,
Yeah, I mean, down a card, like, considering Brazen Borrower a card is generous in this matchup, but you are 100% right that he did have to do that.
Yep. All right, so a fetch, putting Kaplan at 8, I believe. Yes.
We need the big brain burn players that are splashing Kroxa.
Kroxa's a cool card. Kind of wish it saw more play.
I mean, it sees a ton of play in Modern, right?
I believe so. That's true.
Modern Jund staple.
Is it a staple at this point? I'm not sure. I really haven't been paying attention.
I just assume that that's exactly the kind of card that a Jund deck wants.
Yeah. I think that's accurate. So, a swing here puts Greg at 16, I believe.
Yeah. Flashback the Brainstorm is going to put a counter on that Sprite Dragon. I don't know. I mean, I see that 2 Sprite Dragon seems to just be the accepted norm in Blue-Red Delver, but it sure does seem super underwhelming all the time.
I think, did he cast something here to put a counter on it? Did I miss something?
He flashed back the Brainstorm off the Arcanist.
Okay, so that's what he's resolving now?
That is what he's resolving, yeah.
I see. Okay.
I mean, this game seems to be fairly locked up, but there's like the possibility that Greg just gets a bunch of draw steps and then, can fire off some uncontested burn spells to still steal the game. So, you got to play it out.
Yep.
Judging off of everything that's happening on board right now and the fact that he didn't use 3 mana, though, got to assume that he's just drawing empty. He is empty and needs to draw gas.
Yeah, 2 Firecrafts and the game is over. That's true.
2 Firecrafts, but one of those... Oh, yeah, he definitely has Spell Mastery for sure. Okay.
Yeah. It's pretty easy to get Spell Mastery with this deck. Spell Mastery is a cool mechanic. I hope they bring that back. That was fun.
Yeah, it's a threshold mechanic, right? And
yeah, essentially.
It's kind of fun to... I mean, Spell Mastery, like 2 spells for Spell Mastery is obviously very, very innocuous in Legacy, but
yeah,
at least it is a mechanic that your opponent can interact with, right? Like,
yeah.
If somebody has exactly 2 spells and you cling to dust in response to a Spell Mastery spell, like that's pretty sweet.
True. Yeah, it was very fun and limited. I agree. There was a couple of Spell Mastery cards in limited that I have no idea what they were called, but they're some of my favorite cards to draft when I draft that format.
I remember like the nod to how powerful Bolt is in general when there was a card that was Spell Mastery. It was deal 2 damage to a creature. Spell Mastery, deal 3 damage to a creature.
So, Force a Negation, pitching Daze on... Wow. And then another Daze for Eidolon. So he countered a Brainstorm, then countered Eidolon. A really good turn for Kaplan.
Do you lead with Brainstorm there?
I don't think so, but maybe he's worried about taking 2 from his own Eidolon. That's the only reason I can think of that
That's possible.
makes sense to swap.
Yeah, I'm thinking because Greg only has 1 card in hand, so if he knows that he wants to have the Eidolon, he wants to cast the Eidolon rather, that like at best you're going to Brainstorm and you're not going to be able to fix 2 cards because one of the cards in your hand you want. So it's going to be a subpar Brainstorm.
Yeah.
I mean, assuming you don't lock yourself and then you're going to have all those cards anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, this game is now it is over, I would think. I mean, I don't know. Running Firecrafts, I guess.
Did the
No,
Brainstorm take
got
it to
countered.
Eidolon? Yeah, Brainstorm got countered. Eidolon got countered.
The Eidolon was in his hand, and I mean, I don't think you can necessarily put your opponent on specifically Daze plus Force of Negation, but Eidolon happens to play around all of that on 3 mana, and it will keep the Dread Horde from... I mean, it's like the Dread Horde will attack, and then you know that the Bolt is going to trade for the Eidolon, but I mean, if your line is get him dead because he's at 8, and you know that your outs are likely going to be your fatter burn spells, then that Brainstorm could probably be leveraged a little. Like, I don't know if leading on the Brainstorm when you have at least 1 card in your hand is good when you have the play of the Eidolon. And then even if you want to do that, you can then follow. Like, essentially, I'm thinking to myself, if you lead on the Brainstorm, what are you hoping to find on 2 mana?
Yeah.
And if it's 3rd mana plus fetch plus, or so if it's fetch as your 3rd mana plus Exquisite Firecraft and then hoping to sack the other Firecraft, then I guess that's a line. That seems pretty deep.
Kaplan really trying to boost this Sprite Dragon right now, though. It looks like he's trying to chain a bunch of spells and swing for lethal here. Can he possibly do that?
I mean, he's counting, so he's got 4 damage off the Arcanist, which would be 4, 6. So he's got 13. No, he's got 10 damage right now. If you were to play out of the yard, he's got 10 damage.
If he dropped another bolt, that's still not lethal. Now we'll see.
No, I'm sorry. He's got 11 damage when he casts the bolt out of the yard.
Okay, so maybe he has another bolt.
I would assume that if he had another bolt, he's casting it pre-combat, so he can get the, or he'll cast it before damage to get the counter. He doesn't have it, so he's going to go with the cantrip since it's not going to make a difference in the clock.
Okay, so he doesn't go for the bolt. He just goes for a preordain.
Yeah, which makes more sense because if your clock's going to be the same, you might as well find another card. I assume he's also 100% going to fire off this waste on this vault because it's free.
I guess I missed some damage to Greg. He has himself at 13. Not sure what I missed, but okay, so now Greg has himself at 5 and he scoops. Okay, so Kaplan gets game 1.
Yeah, I mean, mulligan to 6, no recurable source of damage.
Let me just make sure they're not starting. Not yet. Okay, really quickly, I think, oh, they're starting.
Yeah, turn 1 Goblin Guide for Greg is obviously where he wants to be.
Yep. Luanel, thanks for the cheer.
It shows a Brainstorm on top, so it's free damage. Do you remember when Goblin Guide was like $40?
I do.
Also, do you remember when Blue Red Delver was playing Goblin Guide?
I know Kaplan was. I'm trying to decipher Jason's list. Did we hit a bingo? I'll check back with that in a moment.
So we got a Pluto Delta cracked, putting the cap to 17, getting yield basic island.
What creature with flying did we see tonight?
Sprite Dragon.
Sprite Dragon, this is true.
It's a fairy dragon. Is it the cheapest dragon that's ever been printed? Potentially, right? 2-mana dragon.
I feel like there was like some 1-mana dragon with some crazy drawback, but maybe I'm wrong.
Changeling doesn't count.
What's that?
Changeling don't count.
Oh yeah, changelings don't count. All right, Goblin Guy gets in.
Suspender Rift Bolt.
Kaplan gets a land.
So like this Goblin Guide just being a spell that has converted 4 damage is already like I feel like it just makes this game so favorable for Greg, even though he's on 1 land, because it just means that his hand is all gas, and off of this 1 mana, he will be potentially converting at least 7 damage. Or 1 mana source, rather.
Wow, chat found the 1-mana dragon. Slumbering Dragon. Thank you, chat. Shout out to Skyship. Thank you, Skyship. What's up, Skyship? Skyship always with the clutch. Looking up the cards. All right.
So this Goblin Guide, I don't know if it's connected yet, but it showed a Vapor Snag on top that's getting fetched away. And it looks like it's going to be something to get rid of the Goblin Guide. Do you remember Vexing Devil? What a miserable card that was.
Yeah, what did that do again? You had to...
Vexing Devil was just a 1-mana 4/3 unless they chose to take 4. And it was as a Punisher mechanic that is supposed to create some kind of gameplay and decision. The decision was always pretty much decided for you. You took 4 if you couldn't deal with a 4/3, or if 4 damage killed you, you just gave them a 4/3.
Gotcha.
It wasn't very interesting, which is why I called it miserable.
It sounds miserable. All right, a bolt here to the face. For some reason, for this match, I consistently have the life totals wrong, but whatever. I'm using Greg's pad right now to figure this out.
Well, it looks like that bolt is going to hit, so he goes to 8. If that's
Kaplan goes to 8, yeah. With 1 land in play, he's managed to do 12 damage.
1 land, I mean, it just means to me that, I don't know what unless he just never draws his 2nd mana source and only has a hand of 2 and 3 drops, it just seems like an unwinnable matchup from this position for Dave. He can take a lot of game actions, but it feels like it's going to come down to the mercy of Greg's draws because that Goblin Guide converted so much damage. I hope I'm wrong, though.
All right, another fetch. Goes to 7.
I'm one of those, over-the-top commentators that just says really grandiose and dramatic things that may be wrong.
No, you're the perfect kind of commentator. Here's Delver, though. Is that the first Delver we've seen so far? Has the Delver even been cast yet?
That is the first Delver of the night.
Took 2 rounds. 3 games.
This is a Chain Lightning. This Chain Lightning just has to be going to the face, right?
I hope so.
Also,
yeah, I don't think you want to target Delver with this in this situation.
Big game also is that he found a second mana source.
Yeah. Force a negation.
Yeah, convert.
I like that.
My guess is that he doesn't have many other blue cards because with him showing, I mean, it's also reasonable that now that he has a second source, he just never has to walk a 1-mana spell into Days ever again. But the fact that he's been stuck on mana for so long that Days is likely to convert. So we have a bolt in response to a brainstorm, and it goes through.
Yep. Puts Kaplan at 4, a very precarious 4 life. Life hanging by a thread here.
Well, if you had the Fire Blast and that bolt resolved, I assume you fire it off, right? Maybe not.
Maybe you get wrecked by Days there, too hard.
Well, it's also possible, I'm just thinking, if you have Days there and a brainstorm is on the stack, I imagine that you'd want to pick up a land, because if you can convert that land into another spell that can trade after you have a threat on the table, that's good.
Yeah. All right, Delver gets in. Insectile Aberration hits for 3. Kaplan's on the board, but still at 4 life.
Me thinking that you would play a Fire Blast there might just be way too aggressive. You know that you didn't have a second land for a long time, and you're not under enough pressure to have to make that kind of play. Yeah, especially when you just draw your 3rd mana to play a Firecraft.
That's game. All right, let's take a look at this bingo card because I think we hit a bingo there. Just going to verify. Jam those emotes. Poll's about to start. Legacy, pre-modern, Legacy with some unbans, and Tribal Wars. Those are the options for Monday. It's a 10-minute poll, and it starts now. So make sure you vote in the poll. And Kaplan and Greg are playing now. Here's a Goblin Guide.
Fetch, pass, and then a Goblin Guide on turn 1, which is where Greg wants to be.
Goblin Guide trigger is on the stack.
Yo, luckily for us, neither of us ever pander to the chat. Am I right?
Not enough. All right. Opening up my poll results in another window. And we're off to the start. All right, so pre-modern and Legacy with some unbans are early leads in the poll.
So we got a Brainstorm off this island, which I assume is looking for red mana source plus removal spell.
Yep. All right, so a land revealed off the Goblin Guide trigger. Here's Bloodstained Mire.
So the Bloodstained Mire getting cracked. I guess you would usually wait to fire off a removal spell on the Goblin Guide until you see if it's going to net you a card.
Yeah. All right, a 2-drop's coming here, and it's Dread Horde. So that's going to at least soak up a burn spell here, I think.
Yo, this is Monka makes a good point. 200,000 points to vote again is really steep, and I think in the current world that we live in, we should be making voting easier.
This is true.
We should probably bring that down.
All right, let's check on the poll. Poll is about roughly 10% done or something like that. Legacy with some unbans leading. Tribal Wars also leading. I've been getting so many messages where people are just like, when are you doing Tribal Wars again? How come you didn't do Merfolk? How come you didn't do Slivers? How come you didn't do Soldiers? When are you going to do Tribal Wars? It's so funny.
Dude, I mean, knowing now that we have like those the specialties on Tuesdays and potentially hint plug that there may be a third consistent night of 90s MTG happening soon.
Maybe.
I mean, 90s MTG, or Tribal Wars on for that seems like a good pickup to continuously play.
If you and maybe this is an ad for Tribal Wars in a way, but if you were to play Tribal Wars again, Phil, what would you sleeve up?
Well, is it Tribal Wars with or without sideboards?
Without sideboards. It always has to be without sideboards. And what's funny is I caught up with a whole Tribal Wars league. There's a whole Tribal Wars community that exists in the dark depths of the internet. I found these people, and they're awesome. And they play without sideboards, and they explain to me all the reasons why, and it makes total sense. I'll explain to you later. But you have to play without sideboards. Anyway,
I mean,
so that's the rule.
The last time I played Tribal Wars, I played a really interesting Clerics combo deck. But the games that I played were 2 games where I opened my hand, and then my hand was entirely blanked by Chalice. And so I actually didn't really take any game actions. So I have no idea if that deck even is good or bad because I didn't actually get to play it. So I'd probably sleeve that up again to get a second go to see if that was a reasonable idea or if it was too far out of the woods.
That's fair.
But other than that, I think what were the other tribes I was considering? I was thinking about sleeving up the Time Walks tribe. You know, just Time Walks and Time Warp, and
I think if we were to run it back, it would be interesting because now everybody played it once, and a lot of light bulbs went off for all of us. I think it's like you're against a tribal deck. You can play some really wacky stuff in the main deck to have an advantage. All right, Delver text.
The other thing I might consider is there's also, I imagine, a bunch of ways to abuse Painter in really clever ways.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure.
I'm forgetting the name of the Cephalid, but there's the 4-mana Cephalid that bounces all blue creatures, and then your opponents can't play blue creatures.
Oh, yeah. I forgot what it's called.
If you pair that in your blue deck and just protect Painter, then you can incidentally have the Painter combo, but then also have this, Forever Wrath.
Yeah.
Of course, Painter's a construct, and the Cephalid is a Cephalid. It's like Cephalid Empress or something like that.
Wow, somebody found it. Yep.
One, yeah, legendary. It used to be a sideboard card for Merfolk mirrors.
It's a noble, maybe noble tribal.
So it was errated to noble, right? When noble became a
yeah.
But, so a long time ago, back when Merfolk was a tier 1 deck and people were playing like Kira and whatnot, you would play a couple of Lawans on the board for the mirror because if it's stuck and it could get there through counter magic because of Aether Vial, that the game would just end because your opponent could never remove it.
Changing the subject for a moment. Here's Surgical again. This time targeting Dreadhorde. He stands by this Surgical, I guess.
Did he say what he boards out for Surgical?
He said he takes out Price of Progress and brings in Surgical and what else did he say? Did he say he brought in something else? I don't remember.
So maybe the Surgicals are just like, well, the cards that he's boarding out that he wants to board out is specifically Price of Progress, and then the cards that he boards in don't matter. So I guess the Roulette is the most effective doing literally anything is Surgical, considering that off 2 Volks you're not boarding in Pierce. That seems pretty specific to just for combo. Vapor Snag doesn't do anything. Smash to Smithereens isn't going to do anything, and then Sulfuric Vortex is a 3-mana sorcery speed spell against the Daze deck that you don't want. So
Fire Blast U in response to a Braid now is on the stack. and it would make the Swift Spears have 4 toughness. So this is a bit of a blowout.
Wow, foil Swift Spear and non-foil Swift Spear.
Are they? Maybe it's just.
They might both be foil, and only one is catching any glare.
Yeah.
So
Ooh, bolt on top. Okay, that's pretty good. Greg with no lands now. What? I think Kaplan's at 8. It's a little hard to read handwriting here. I'm going to check the players' life totals because I can't read it.
And then ask how many cards Greg has in hand.
Okay. Hey guys, what are the life totals now?
I'm at 16. Dave is at 2.
He's at 2. Okay, and how many cards are in your hand, Greg?
2.
Okay, thanks. 2 cards in hand for Greg, and Kaplan is at 2 life. I didn't realize.
So it's probably safe to say that either of those spells in hand kill Kaplan, so a land off the top will seal the game.
Yep. Okay, so he bolts Swift Spear and swings for 6. So Greg goes to 10. He has no lands, no permanents in play. 2 cards in hand. Now 3 cards in hand.
So there's
Ooh,
that
what happened?
fetch.
Did you just scoop? I missed what happened there.
Grind, given the mold of 4.
Yes, sir. Yes.
What happened at the end there?
I got it.
Oh, okay.
I mulled to 4. That's what happened.
Oh, you mulled to 4 in that game. Okay, okay.